Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Nicole Holland Sims, and I am a contributing educational consultant to Patton's Multi-Tiered System of Support, MTSS initiative. Today, we will be learning about how to integrate evidence-based behavioral health practices within an MTSS framework. The mission of the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network, Patton, is to support the efforts and initiatives of the Bureau of Special Education and to build the capacity of local educational agencies to serve students who receive special education services. Our goal for each child is to ensure individualized education program, IEP, teams begin with the general education setting with the use of supplementary aids and services before considering a more restrictive environment. Pennsylvania's multi-tiered system of support is a standards-aligned comprehensive school improvement framework for enhancing both academic and behavioral health outcomes for all students. Pennsylvania's MTSS model represents an integrated system, meaning that cross-disciplinary teams use a problem-solving process to facilitate shared ownership for achieving academic and behavioral health goals, using a continuum of evidence-based practices and reliable and valid data sources. As indicated, the academic side of MTSS, standards-aligned, high-quality core literacy, mathematics, and STEM instruction is delivered within the context of culturally responsive practices, positive behavioral supports, and family and community engagement. There are key components that form the foundation of PA's MTSS framework. If a well-articulated, well-designed, tiered system is in place, schools should realize efficient, effective, and sustainable outcomes. In Pennsylvania, PBIS, as outlined through the PA-PBS network, utilizes the MTSS framework to improve climate and behavioral, social, and emotional outcomes for every student to include meaningful engagement with families and the larger community. Evidence-based behavioral health practices are adopted and implemented at the systems, grade, classroom, and student levels. That being said, Pennsylvania uses this graphic to fully capture the process schools use to integrate positive behavioral supports within a tiered system. First, schools identify the valued outcomes that they want for all students, such as feeling a sense of, I belong here and I am a learner, within every classroom. Secondly, schools identify and collect a variety of data sources that will indicate whether students are demonstrating desirable social, emotional, and behavioral outcomes. For example, schools might collect and regularly evaluate office discipline referrals by classroom, attendance data, and the results of behavior, reading, and math screenings. Thirdly, schools select and gradually expand their continuum of evidence-based behavioral health practices based upon student needs. Lastly, schools evaluate organizational and implementation issues, including their ability to provide targeted professional learning and/or coaching, and any other supports that will help practitioners individually and collectively achieve and sustain desired outcomes. It is worth noting, school-wide PBIS is not a program, a practice, or a curriculum. Rather, it is a broad set of processes and practices that exist on a continuum of intensity that are coordinated with academic processes and practices within the larger context of comprehensive school improvement and/or a multi-tiered system of support. So, how might a school get started with building the infrastructure and then proceeding with the integrated implementation of academics and behavior within a tiered system? Firstly, it is important that all stakeholders be made aware that approximately 1 in 5 students is at risk for developing behaviors that are likely to impede learning, particularly academic engaged time, if prevention and/or intervention efforts are not enacted. Behavioral health is one of many public health problems, but is preventable and/or treatable within tiered systems that are implemented with fidelity. As we know, some student behaviors are external in nature, such as noncompliance and aggression, while other student behaviors are internal in nature, such as anxiety, depression, and/or withdrawn behavior. Teachers, in fact, report that disrespect, noncompliance, and simple disruptions are the most time-consuming and frequent behavior problems that they face, and unfortunately are least prepared to prevent or manage. If your school is ready to pursue school-wide PBIS, you might consider this four-step process. Number 1, establish a district-level PBIS team. Number 2, select district and building PBIS coaches. Number 3, develop building-based core teams that are cross-disciplinary in representation. And be sure to allocate time for substantive meetings using structured agendas, such as the TIPS model. And number 4, adopt a data system. Please remember to consider visiting www.papbs.org to enlist the help of a network facilitator to begin this process. Similar to our approach in reading and other academic areas, schools are encouraged to begin by assessing the behavioral health of all students using a reliable and valid universal screening system. In conjunction with universal screening, schools should also proceed with the systematic evaluation of school climate by engaging practitioners in dialogue and analysis of the following. What are 3 to 5 common behavioral expectations that we have across all grade levels for all students? Are these 3 to 5 desired behaviors observable and measurable, and have we taught each of them explicitly to every student? Do we use a common language and common strategies to reinforce these 3 to 5 behavioral expectations with every student? Do we systematically monitor behavioral outcomes and the school climate on a regular basis using a common data source that all practitioners have ready access to? The PBIS network is available to schools and grades K-12 to support the efforts outlined above. Schools are encouraged to adopt fidelity measures to assess the health of the system, just as they are to assess the health of tiers 2 and 3. Here is an example of a behavioral matrix. I will pause for a minute so you get a chance to review each setting and the expectations. Data-based decision-making is the cornerstone of Tier 1 and all PBIS implementation. Without a strong data system or mechanism to analyze data at every tier, a true tiered system is not achievable. In many schools, the possible reason PBIS implementation stalls or staff and students no longer buy in is the lack of substance in the process. This requires that schools have powerful incentives as well as other contingencies. Data systems that provide information seen on the graphic allows teams to analyze building-wide data based upon various fields: time of day, location, problem behavior, etc. One of the most important fields would be perceived function of behavior. Perceived function, gaining or avoiding, helps teams in determining appropriate intervention selection, as you'll see as we describe tiers 2 and 3. Without this type of data review, the likelihood of interventions having any utility is small. The other fields described above also helps teams form hypotheses about root causes of the behavioral trends they are seeing in monthly meetings and supports them in developing action steps. Let's delve more deeply now into tiers 2 and 3. We will start with tier 2. Behavioral health supports and services that are offered through tiers 2 and 3 are often more intensive, narrowed in focus or targeted, and more customized than what is provided to the majority of students as part of their general school experience. As illustrated here, for students who require supplemental supports and services, naturally, those students are monitored more frequently using a more intensive problem-solving approach. Problem-solving often includes the use of behavioral and academic diagnostic tools so that evidence-based academic and behavioral intervention is well integrated and matched as closely to need as possible. Family engagement is also critical at all tiers, but particularly at tiers 2 and 3, given the important influence and role of family in a child's life, no matter the age of the child. As schools consider their continuum of data sources and evidence-based practices, it is imperative that problem-solving teams include and utilize the expertise of behavioral health personnel, including school psychologists, behavioral specialists, school social workers, and school counselors, as well as certified mental health personnel who work in the larger community. With respect to Tier 2 supports and services, schools are generally targeting about 15% of their student population, assuming that the majority of students are responding to all of the effective practices that are being implemented at Tier 1. Tier 2 supports and services are often delivered with more intensity through adjustments to group size, the narrowed focus of the behavioral and academic instruction, and through increased adult feedback and monitoring. The effectiveness of Tier 2 supports and services is generally determined by evaluating whether the majority of students who are receiving this level of intensity are improving on average. If most students who are receiving Tier 2 supports and services are exhibiting improved outcomes, then schools may consider their Tier 2 supports to be effective. Conversely, if on average most students are not responding to intervention, then Tier 2 supports and services need to be reevaluated. Tier 2 supports may often serve as an extension of Tier 1 universal expectations and require previewing, teaching, and reteaching for students. To ensure the fidelity of Tier 2, those specific interventions should be continuously available for student participation. Once student needs are matched to Tier 2 interventions, they should receive the intervention in a timely manner. For example, 3 school days after determining there is a need, the student should enter the intervention itself. However, each student's participation in the intervention should be time limited and based upon data sources that are sensitive, reliable, and valid. For example, after 6 weeks, the student should either exit from intervention or progress to a higher level intervention. As the student progresses through the Tier 2 intervention, it is important that the adults encountering the student encourage and provide positive feedback as they make strides. In addition, communication with families regarding intervention progress is imperative and builds a family-school partnership to support consistency. This consistency allows for the student to practice the desired behaviors across settings and helps the student develop skills that extend beyond the classroom. Examples of Tier 2 methodologies include the following. Number 1, check-in, check-out, which is an often used intervention in PBIS, where students check in with an adult in the building to determine their behavioral goals for the day, and then check out in the afternoon to determine whether they've met their daily goal and what they may need to do differently to meet their goal the following day. In addition, number 2, the second step curriculum is available for Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports and provides social-emotional learning skills in the form of lesson plans, online resources, and structures to communicate with families. The curriculum is slated for students K to 8 and could be provided in a small group, ideal for Tier 2 supports. Finally, number 3, social academic instructional groups are specific groups targeting students with identified needs or similar backgrounds. Typically, school counselors provide these supports in the form of anger management groups, children of incarcerated parents groups, social skills groups, etc. There are more examples of Tier 2 methodologies, and the key takeaway is that these are most appropriate for small groups of students with similar functions of behavior. Now, we will discuss effective behavioral practices at Tier 3. Tier 3 supports are designed for the students with intensive needs who have not adequately responded to Tiers 1 and 2. At this level, supports and interventions are more individualized and provided to a very small portion of students due to the intensity of the intervention. As with the other tiers of support, valid, reliable, and sensitive data sources support decision-making to ensure the students receiving Tier 3 supports match their needs. At this level, areas such as emotional regulation and person-centered planning are typically the focus, where students are supported in modifying their behavior to manage their emotions and also consider future goals and individual systems of care. At Tier 3, often specialists in the school system, such as school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, behavioral specialists, and behavior coaches, are the service providers. Their skill and expertise allow them the opportunity to provide some of the following types of supports. Number 1, cognitive behavioral therapy, which the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, defines as exploring relationships among a person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. During CBT, a therapist will actively work with the person to uncover unhealthy patterns of thought and how they may be causing self-destructive behaviors and beliefs. Others may use dialectical behavioral therapy, which focuses on helping individuals regulate and manage intense emotions, develop healthy interpersonal skills, and learn to tolerate stress. While others may support encouraging mindfulness. Mindfulness entails learning to be mindful, to become more self-aware by being present in the moment and paying attention to, or mindful of, one's thoughts, feelings, and behavior. Also, trauma-informed care, violence prevention, bullying prevention, and overall coping strategies are additional areas of consideration at Tier 3 based upon student need, overall school climate, and intensity of intervention. Although most Tier 3 interventions use the expertise of specialists in the building, there are some that would not require their direct service. Check and Connect is an evidence-based Tier 3 mentoring intervention that promotes student engagement, using relationship building, and systematic use of data. Check and Connect is intense in the level of support with the inclusion of a clear structure and connection to the student's family and system of care. Check and Connect was developed at the University of Minnesota and the work of Sandra Christensen. Check and Connect is predicated on the identification and use of an assigned mentor. Mentors engage in relationship building with the student and the student's family. In addition, mentors are asked to commit to at least 2 years as a mentor, as a consistent figure for the student. When mentoring students, at times, there may be resistance from either the student themselves or the families. However, Check and Connect encourages mentors to engage in persistence plus and staying the course, even when met with opposition. Through the actions of checking, which may include systematic monitoring of student attendance, behavioral referrals, and course grades, mentors are also expected to connect by meeting regularly with the student and engaging in problem solving around their outcomes. The goal of connecting is to build student capacity so that when the mentor is no longer available, the student will have the skills needed to self-regulate their own actions socially, behaviorally, and academically. Another social, emotional, behavioral Tier 3 support is Renew. Renew is an evidence-based practice designed to support students in need of intensive, individualized support. It is a Tier 3 intervention and housed within the Behavior Initiative and Secondary Transition Initiative at Patton. The Renew process involves a facilitator trained in the intervention and a youth. There are 4 phases. Number 1, engagement, consent, and mapping. Number 2, youth action plan and team development. Number 3, plan implementation and monitoring. And 4, transition. Facilitators and the youth go through the mapping process, 9 maps total, and identify strengths, important people, dreams, goals, barriers, etc., and then develop an action plan for the youth. The youth invites members to his or her individual team to carry out that action plan. Roles and responsibilities are assigned within the action plan. Success and growth is celebrated with individual team members. Please visit the Patton website for more information on Renew. As a reminder, this graphic may serve as a guide for schools and districts to consider when implementing evidence-based behavioral practices in an MTSS framework. Please visit Patton's MTSS initiative page and access our MTSS Bootcamp Live Binder, access key MTSS. There, you will find evidence-based behavioral health and data resources. When you click on the tab identified by the red arrow, a number of gray tabs will provide you with access to a continuum of evidence-based social, emotional, and behavioral interventions and PA's school-wide PBIS framework. Please also visit www.pattan.net to access a plethora of information ranging from MTSS to behavior to increasing graduation rates. Each of those educational initiatives will be useful and relevant to this topic. The following resources are go-tos to obtain the most recent and up-to-date information regarding effective behavioral practices in an MTSS framework. I'd like to thank you for joining me for this quick pick around behavioral health. Please feel free to reach out to me at nhollins-sims@pattan.net with any questions. Thank you.